What if ancient humanity left behind evidence of something they were never supposed to witness? Across stone carvings, sacred temples, and clay records, there are details so strange, so specific, that no one fully understands them even now. Some call them myths, some call them symbols, but when the same patterns appear across continents that never touched, the mystery becomes much harder to dismiss. Were ancient people describing gods, or something far more unknown? Something that may not have come from this earth? In this video, we'll examine 6 ancient discoveries that point toward one disturbing possibility. Someone was here before us, and they may not have been human. We begin deep in the jungles of Mexico, a place where something was discovered that still unsettles archaeologists today. In 1952, Mexican archaeologist Alberto Ruiz Lujier descended into the Temple of the Inscriptions in the ancient city of Palenque. He spent 4 years excavating, digging deeper and deeper beneath the pyramid, until finally, 25 meters below the surface, he reached a hidden burial chamber. What he found inside made him fall silent. At the center of the room stood a massive limestone sarcophagus. Its lid weighed nearly 5 tons. But it wasn't the weight that shocked researchers. It was the carving on top. The relief shows a man in a strange, unnatural position. His body is bent forward. His hands are placed on what appear to be controls. His feet rest on something that looks like pedals. Below him, flames seem to burst downward. The entire structure surrounding him is enclosed in a long, narrow capsule with a pointed front, almost like a cockpit designed for a single operator. Officially, this figure is said to be the Maya ruler Kinich Janab Pakal. According to archaeologists, he is descending into the underworld, known as Xibalba. The structure around him? They say it represents the world tree. The flames? They are interpreted as roots, but not everyone agrees with this explanation. Engineers who have studied the carving see something very different. They see posture, function, design. Pakal's position closely resembles that of a pilot inside a confined cabin. His back is tilted, his arms are bent toward a control panel. His knees are raised higher than his hips, a posture that makes no sense in ritual, but makes perfect sense in operation. At the front of the structure, there appears to be something like an intake. At the rear, a shape that strongly resembles a propulsion nozzle. And in front of Pakal, a complex panel filled with small, detailed elements. Archaeologists call them decorations. Engineers call them instruments. There is another detail that raises even more questions. In no known Maya ritual imagery does a human sit in this position. It is not a posture of prayer, nor sacrifice. It is the posture of control. Pakal lived to the age of 80 and ruled Palenque for 68 years, one of the longest reigns in human history. He was not an ordinary ruler, and the way he was buried, inside what looks like a machine, suggests something far more personal than symbolism. If the image is rotated, the interpretation becomes even more unsettling. What once looked like a tree now resembles a vertical craft, with a human figure inside it. This interpretation was first brought to global attention by Erich von Däniken in 1968. And since then, one simple question has remained unanswered. If this is just a symbolic tree, why does it have something that looks like an engine? But Palenque only gave us a visual mystery. The next discovery goes much further, because this time, it isn't just an image, it's data, precise, calculated, and still largely unexplained. The Dresden Codex is one of only 3 surviving manuscripts of the Maya civilization, a fragile document, made from fig tree bark, coated with a thin layer of lime. It consists of 39 folded pages, covered in black and red ink. But what's inside should not exist. In 1880, German librarian Ernst Förstermann began decoding its astronomical tables. What he found was shocking. The Maya had calculated the synodic cycle of Venus with extraordinary precision. Modern astronomy gives the value as 583.92 days. The Maya recorded it as 584 days, an error of just 0.02%. That level of accuracy, over a span of 500 years, without telescopes, without lenses, without even metal tools. It shouldn't be possible, but it doesn't stop there. The Codex also contains lunar eclipse tables, accurate to a single day, across cycles spanning 33 years. Again, far beyond what we would expect from a civilization without optical instruments. And then, there is something even more unsettling. The timeline recorded in the codex stretches back millions of years, far before the Maya civilization even existed, far before recorded human history. Why would a jungle civilization track time hundreds of millions of years into the past? Where did these numbers come from? And more importantly, how were they calculated? If these were not based on direct observation, then someone had to teach them. There is another detail often overlooked. In 1562, Spanish Bishop Diego de Landa ordered the burning of Maya texts. Thousands of manuscripts were destroyed. Entire libraries gone. Out of everything that once existed, only 3 codices survived. And even within these fragments, we find knowledge that seems ahead of its time, which leads to an uncomfortable question. If this is what survived, what was lost? What kind of knowledge existed in the books that were burned? And why does what remains still challenge what we think ancient civilizations were capable of? Now we move from the jungles of Central America to a cold alpine valley in northern Italy, a place where the rocks themselves seem to record something strange. Val Camonica contains over 300,000 petroglyphs, carved into stone over a period of nearly 10,000 years. It is the largest collection of rock art in Europe, recognized by UNESCO. Most of the carvings are exactly what you would expect: scenes of hunting, farming, war, daily life. But among these familiar images, there are figures that don't belong, figures that look almost modern. On several panels, researchers have identified what they call the astronauts of Val Camonica. These figures have round shapes surrounding their heads, like helmets. From these circular forms, lines extend outward, resembling antennas or some kind of radiating structure. Their bodies are different too, broader, heavier, with proportions that don't match normal human figures nearby, almost as if they are wearing something bulky, something like a suit. Official explanations suggest these are ritual headdresses, symbolic decorations worn by priests, and the unusual proportions, they are said to be stylistic choices. But there is a detail that makes this explanation difficult to accept. On one panel, dated to around the 4th millennium BCE, 2 of these helmeted figures stand beside ordinary humans. The difference is immediate. The normal humans are drawn simply, thin lines, minimal detail, empty heads. But the helmeted figures are far more detailed, deliberately emphasized, as if the artist wanted to show these are not the same beings. On another carving, one of these figures holds an object in its hand. From it, wavy lines extend downward toward the ground. Archaeologists describe it as a ritual staff, but the shape and the pattern of the lines look more like some kind of emitting device. Energy, radiation, something being projected. Here's what makes this even more unsettling. The ancient artists of Val Camonica were consistent. They drew animals to look like animals, humans to look like humans. Everything matched reality. So if they carved figures with helmets, with antennas, then they were likely drawing something they actually saw, not imagined, observed, and recorded. Now we leave Europe behind and move into the heart of the Sahara Desert, a place that today feels lifeless, silent, endless. But thousands of years ago, this was a green savanna with rivers, lakes, and life everywhere. In this region lies Tassili Najar, a vast plateau covered with more than 15,000 ancient paintings, created over a period of 6,000 to 8,000 years. Discovered in detail by French researcher Henri Loti in 1956, what he found there was unlike anything seen before. Among scenes of daily life, hunting giraffes, herding animals, dancing, swimming, there are figures that don't fit, not at all. One of them became especially famous. Loti himself gave it a name: the Great Martian God. The figure stands nearly 6 meters tall. Its head is perfectly round. No face, no nose, no mouth, just 2 large, empty oval shapes. Where the eyes should be, the head appears covered, like a smooth helmet. The body is wrapped in something resembling a suit, with lines running across it, like seams or connections. Even Loti, a cautious scientist, admitted something unusual. He later clarified that the term Martian was only metaphorical, but the image itself remains deeply unsettling, because it does not resemble any known deity, not any animal, not any human, and the contrast is impossible to ignore. Right next to this figure are scenes drawn with clear realism. Recognizable people, recognizable animals, everything grounded in reality. And then suddenly, a being that looks like it stepped out of a modern spacesuit. On other panels, the mystery deepens. There are figures wearing what appear to be sealed suits, with tubes running from their backs toward their heads. Others stand beneath disc-shaped objects, from which rays seem to extend outward. In one scene, groups of humans gather around an oval structure, with lines radiating from it. The composition doesn't look like worship. It doesn't look like ritual. It looks structured, almost like interaction, even transport. In some images, these suited figures appear to be guiding humans, holding their hands, leading them toward the object. Not as gods receiving offerings, but as something else. Something far more direct. If these were purely imagined beings, why do they resemble modern astronauts so closely? Why not wings, or horns, or mythological forms seen across other cultures? Instead, we see functional details: helmets, seals, tubes, connections, design elements, not symbols. Imagination tends to create myths. But these images look more like engineering. Now we move to West Africa, to one of the most isolated cultures on Earth, a place where something was known that shouldn't have been known at all. The Dogon people live along the Bandiagra escarpment in Mali. Their villages cling to cliffs, hundreds of meters above the ground. For most of their history, they had no writing system, no telescopes, no lenses, no modern tools to observe the sky. And yet, they described something that even modern science struggled to confirm. In 1931, French anthropologists Marcel Griaule and Germain Dieterlen began studying the Dogon. What they uncovered challenged everything we thought we knew about ancient knowledge. The Dogon spoke in detail about the Sirius star system, not just as a single star, but as a complex system. They claimed Sirius had a hidden companion star, invisible to the naked eye. They called it Potolo, meaning the smallest seed, but also the heaviest thing imaginable. According to their description, this star was incredibly dense. So dense that a small amount of its material would weigh more than anything on Earth. Decades later, science confirmed this. Sirius B is a white dwarf, an object so dense that a single teaspoon of its matter would weigh tons. The Dogon also described its orbital cycle. They said it takes 50 years to orbit Sirius. Modern measurements? Approximately 50.4 years, an error of less than 1%. And this is where the mystery deepens. How did a tribe without telescopes know about an invisible star? Skeptics suggest that the Dogon may have learned this from European missionaries. But there's a problem. When Griaule began his research in 1931, Sirius B was not widely known, not even among most scientists. The nature of white dwarfs was still being debated, even in advanced academic circles. So for this explanation to work, a missionary in a remote African village would have needed to know cutting-edge astrophysics before much of the scientific world fully accepted it. The Dogon themselves offer a different explanation. They say their knowledge came from beings called the Nomo, amphibious entities, from the Sirius system. They arrived in a vessel accompanied by fire and thunder, and they passed down knowledge from the stars. What makes this even more intriguing is that neighboring tribes, like the Bambara and Bozo, tell similar stories about beings connected to water and the sky. So we are left with a difficult choice. Is this all coincidence? A series of lucky guesses aligned with modern science? Or was this knowledge given to them by something that understood the universe far beyond human capability? Our final destination takes us to ancient India, not to ruins, not to carvings, but to texts. Documents that describe something with a level of detail that feels disturbingly technical. The ancient Sanskrit epics, especially the Mahabharata, contain over 200 references to flying machines. They are called Vimanas, and these are not vague mentions. They are described in detail: structure, function, capabilities, almost like engineering notes, hidden inside mythology. Different types of Vimanas are mentioned, some designed for travel within the atmosphere, others capable of moving through space. One of the most well-known is the Pushpaka Vimana, said to belong to King Ravana, According to the text, it could move at incredible speeds, change direction instantly, and carry multiple passengers. But what makes this even more unusual is the description of how it worked. The texts refer to something like a mercury vortex engine, a term that appears repeatedly across different passages. Later writings, such as the Vaimanika Shastra, go even further. They describe dozens of components, specific materials, heat-resistant metals, types of fuel. There are even mentions of mirrors and lenses mounted on the craft, used for observation, defense, and possibly camouflage. One section describes aerial combat tactics, how to evade attacks, how to disorient enemy pilots, even how to generate sound waves to create fear. Of course, skeptics point out that the Vaimanika Shastra, in its current form, was written in the early 20th century, allegedly dictated through a form of channeling, which raises valid doubts. But the core descriptions of Vimanas exist in much older texts, manuscripts that are centuries, even thousands of years old. And within those same texts, there is something even more disturbing. A weapon, described with terrifying precision. It is called the Brahmastra. The texts say it produces a blinding flash, brighter than 1,000 suns, followed by a column of fire, rising into the sky. Everything within its reign is destroyed. After its use, the land becomes barren. Nothing grows. For generations, survivors lose their hair, their nails fall out, food becomes poisoned, birds fall from the sky. If someone had tried to describe a nuclear explosion, without knowing what nuclear physics is, this is exactly what it would sound like. In 1945, after witnessing the first atomic explosion, J. Robert Oppenheimer quoted a line from the Bhagavad Gita, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," a line rooted in the same ancient tradition. So now we have to ask, how could ancient texts describe something so similar to technologies we only developed in the last century? Was this imagination, symbolism, or memory of something far older? 6 discoveries, 6 different places on Earth, separated by thousands of kilometers and thousands of years. A stone carving in Palenque that looks like a human inside a machine. A Maya codex with astronomical data no one fully understands. Figures carved into alpine rock that resemble beings in helmets. Paintings in the Sahara showing what appear to be suits, tubes, and unknown forms. A remote African tribe describing a star system invisible to the naked eye. Ancient Indien texts detailing flying machines and weapons with effects that feel disturbingly modern. Each of these, on its own, can be explained away. Myth, symbolism, coincidence, misinterpretation. But all of them, together, that's where the explanation becomes harder. Because across continents that never connected, across cultures that never met, we see the same patterns, the same ideas, beings from above, machines in the sky, knowledge that shouldn't exist at that time. So what are we really looking at? Is this just how the human mind works, creating the same stories again and again? Or are these fragments of something real, something experienced, something remembered, and passed down across generations? If that's true, then the question is no longer, are we alone? But something far more unsettling. Have we never been alone at all? And if the answer has been here this whole time, hidden in stone, written in forgotten texts, then maybe the real mystery isn't the evidence. Maybe the real mystery is why we've been trying so hard not to see it.